Welcome! Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. I am delighted to say that this book met and even exceeded all expectations. It deserves every accolade and award it ever got. I didn't foresee how much I was going to enjoy it. So Arthur C. Clarke's work does not always thrill me. Some of it's good, some of it is very meh. But in Rama, the writing is just gorgeous. It's elegant, it's well paced, the story is exciting, and the reveal is so well paced that every moment is enjoyable from the writing, but the slow progression of the story means that those occasional very exciting peaks in it have their full impact, unlike a book that's more adventurous and more excitement on every page, where you just sort of become inured to excitement. So it begins at least with very short chapters. I think they get longer as we continue on, but the very short chapters allow for development of different characters or stakeholders, as corporate speak would have it, and the different backgrounds. And it means that you inevitably get a certain amount of background politics, scene setting, that the writing isn't quite as interesting, but it's never too long and it slowly builds up nicely. The progression and the pacing of this story almost feel casual, but it builds this slow intellectual excitement rather than relying on actual exciting events. And the whole book becomes incredibly impactful. So this isn't the first time I've read Rama. This is very much a reread. The first time I read it, I'm pretty sure I was in my early teens, and I remember liking it, but not being blown away. I suspect I didn't have enough astronomy to understand. This is probably actually one of the books that helped teach me astronomy, the astronomy of the solar system. I don't think I had enough science to really appreciate how meticulous and beautifully put together Rama is. And when I was younger, I wanted excitement. I was more swords and sorcery there for a while than science fiction. So the really young me didn't love it. I reread it again. I'm going to say it was probably in my 30s, and I remembered liking it more than I expected. So I liked it better than I'd liked it that original time. But I didn't own the book, and I didn't read it again for a long time. And this time it was a complete wow experience. Adult omnivorous reader is far more impressed by good writing than juvenile omnivorous reader was. The fact that the sentences just roll beautifully off the tongue impresses me far more than a really exciting story with bad writing. Bill Starr, The Treasure of Wonderwhat, I'm Looking at You. That was one of my favourite books when I was 12. Now I can barely read it. So yes, anyway. When I was young, I liked it. I read it again, I liked it even more, and this time I absolutely adore it, and I'm hanging on to this beautiful little edition. I think I got this in my huge November book haul. This is a 1973 Orbit edition. There's many, many different covers. This probably isn't the most beautiful, but I think it's still quite a nice one. So I imagine that the story of Rendezvous with Rama is incredibly well known now, but in brief, it's 1973, early science fiction, anyway, by the English author Arthur C. Clarke. It's set in the 2100s, I think, though I seem to remember somewhere in here there being mention of the date 2270, so I'm not too sure about that. Anyway, in this future, humans have spread out from the Earth. They've inhabited multiple locations around the solar system. There's a United Planets association, includes Earth, the Moon. Mercury has been settled by people that call themselves Hermians, and their culture is a big part in the later part of the story. But people have also settled on Mars, not Venus. I think Titan. There's 8 in overall. So there is travel within the solar system, but it isn't incredibly speedy. From the 70s, Clarke foresaw levels of science, I'm going to say in a very cautious way. So he in Rendezvous with Rama, he describes different types of science that they didn't have then but could foresee from what they were discovering. And it's a bit funny for us because they've got travel within the solar system, but other types of technologies aren't even mentioned. And in many ways, Clarke is foreseeing a future where science is less than it is today. So that's quite interesting. And it plays a part in that. At the beginning, it slowly builds up this picture of an asteroid that's being perceived. We'll start with chapter 1, Space Guard. It's an interesting concept about meteorites. So it talks about meteorites that had already hit. 1908 near Moscow, one hit. There was another one in 1947 apparently near Russia. And it talks about how as humanity spread over the face of the earth, they decided they needed a space guard to foresee meteorites coming in. But in 2130, radars were discovering heaps of new asteroids and heaps of new meteorites. And they follow this one particular meteorite, which gets categorized as 31/439. It's perceived quite far out and it's tracked, but not with any huge excitement. It's just another meteorite until one particular scientist noticed that it's light reflecting off it, I can't remember the phrase, is a bit off. So they studied it a bit more closely. They realized that it's got an incredibly it's detected outside Jupiter. So we start following it from then. It's quite far out, we can't see too much. Eventually they figure out from watching it that it's got an extremely rapid rotation of 4 minutes and that it's exceptionally large. It gets named Rama after the Hindu god. Clarke has a good point here where he says that scientists had long since run out of Roman and Greek gods to name stellar bodies after, so they'd started on the Hindu pantheon, which would keep them occupied for a while. It's a huge pantheon and quite exciting. So Rama's attracted attention, sending satellites to investigate it on its incredibly fast trajectory towards the sun is difficult, but they reroute one at a huge expense, which they call Sita, which rendezvous with Rama, and then it becomes incredibly obvious that Rama is not a natural asteroid. It's spherical. It's obviously not man-made, but it's intelligence-made. At that point, we get our main protagonists come on the scene. A starship called Endeavour is co-opted from what it was previously doing, which I can't remember, and it's sent to study Rama. And we follow the Endeavour and its captain, as they very, very carefully make rendezvous with Rama. So it's spinning on an axis. They described it as a water heater, I think. A cylinder that looked a lot like a something. I can't remember what the something was. It isn't something I know, but I got the impression that it's like a water heater of some kind. So it's rotating around its axis, but you've got two flattish ends, and the Endeavour comes in to land on the top. People penetrate through triple airlocks, and they find this massive cylinder that's basically, I think it's meant to be 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers in diameter. And so basically you've got this geodesic spaceship, and it talks about how they first start to explore it in the dark. They find that there's air in there and it's breathable air. So that makes it exciting to explore. And then Rama slowly comes alight, turning on lights, and then you get humidity, and as it gets closer to the sun, there's this huge circular ocean around the perimeter, and that thaws from the inside out. The level of science is delicate and fascinating. It doesn't info dump on you. You've got characters that are good and interesting, and you follow those characters, and then you get small bits of science that are relative to the situation that build a really phenomenal reading experience. Considering how ambivalent I've been about Arthur C. Clarke in the past, I was really, really excited at how much I enjoyed this. Another thing that Arthur C. Clarke does with as much delicacy and subtlety as he does the science and the discovery of Rama, this amazing alien, what is it? They don't know. And honestly, we never really entirely find out throughout this book. There's many things it can be. There's some things it obviously is. But there's so much that's left to the imagination. Anyway, the social cultural setting, which Clarke also defines quite lightly, he clearly wants the reader to know that civilization has progressed and changed since the 1970s. Say hello, Rippy Cheap. No, Rippy Cheap is hungry. Rippy Cheap doesn't care about science fiction. So Clarke clearly wants the reader to know that the human civilization has progressed and changed, and I'm not sure that he demonstrates it's progressed, because humans seem as ornery and argumentative as ever, but he does paint cultural change very well. He does it, again, very subtly. In a dozen small drops, you slowly realize how different the culture is. For example, as the Endeavour, which, yes, is named after Captain James Cook's Endeavour, and there's references to him, which I enjoyed greatly. In response to the Endeavour landing on Rama, a Rama committee is formed, and the guy who heads it, who may or may not be part of the United Planets Commission, I couldn't quite tell what the difference between these two bodies was, but I think there is one. So the Rama, Dr. Bose, who heads the Rama committee, is 115 and seems to still be in his prime, and that's just a drop that you get early on. We hear certain things about the crew of the Endeavour, one of which is Lieutenant Commander Mercer, who's one of the 3 first people to go into the hull to explore, is chosen because he's an expert in life support systems, and he is famous for his biofeedback control, which is apparently biofeedback control, we gather, is common throughout the spacing community. It means that he can slow his heart, slow his breathing, biocontrol, sort of think levels of control that have been claimed by various holy men over the years. It sounds like it's a bit like that, but it's also described as scientific. So that was interesting. There's throwaway comments here and there suggesting that romantic relationships are far more acceptably diverse in this future world than they were in the 70s, but definitely I'd say more than they are now in some ways. Most of the characters that you associate with are male, but women do occupy positions that are of analogous responsibility, and no big deal is made about it. So there's a woman on the Rama committee who has a specialty in anthropology, I think it was, or possibly archaeology. And there are women in the crew of the Endeavour, and we're given the perspective that they are equal. We don't meet a lot of them. We meet one who is the only person on board who's got sailing experience, and she creates this raft with which they sail this inland sea, which is a great, great scene, I thought. But yeah, small drops. For example, yes, on page 215, there's a little section where the buck stops here, a well-known phrase, I think. Hang on, let me find it for you. If I made a point of writing down the page, I must have. Yes, okay, so there was a story he had heard somewhere about the President of the United States, one of them, who had a sign on his desk saying, "The buck stops here." Norton, that's the captain, was not quite certain what a buck was, but he knew when one had stopped at his desk. So that's an example of the really nice writing that I found very enjoyable. And it's meshed with the fact that Arthur C. Clarke is trying to describe a future in which a buck either doesn't mean money or there isn't money as we know it. Though the cost of rerouting the Endeavour and the cost of rerouting the unmanned Sita to look at Rama is described as in huge costs, he's obviously trying to suggest that capitalism is a bit different. So anyway, and while the build-up is slow, it feels like the most important part of the book, and the most of it is them exploring the interior of Rama, discovering amazing things, watching it slowly wake up. And I don't know if you can see the dark circles under my eyes. They are there because last night I could not put it down, and I read until about 1 or 2 in the morning. Luckily, today I'm not working. That's so good. Because I don't think I'd have been able to put it down even if I was, to be honest. It was a great book. And it slowly builds up to a few final discoveries. None of them are momentous, but each one of them is exciting and interesting. And I'm not going to mention any of the individual small adventures along the way. I'm just going to say that the slow discovery makes the final scramble to escape Rama when they have to completely exciting. And the ending is great. In that, in the 70s, not everything was meant to be a series, and Clarke claims that he didn't write the ending with anything more in mind than a nice ending, but it does suggest that there might be future books. And indeed there were future books. Arthur C. Clarke and Gentry Lee wrote Rama 2, and I think there was a third one as well. Because, as it says in that last paragraph, on far-off Earth, Dr. Carlyle Pereira had as yet told no one how he had woken up from a restless sleep with the message on it from his subconscious still echoing in his brain: the Ramans do everything in threes. And that's a reference to the fact that everything they found, from ladders to airlocks to buildings to structures, they all did come in threes. And while we never actually find out what a Rama person looks like, there's hints. Again, this book hints. It hints, it paints subtly, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, Arthur C. Clarke, for writing it. I don't know what to do after this one. Any book is probably going to feel like a letdown after this one. Thank you for watching this video. If you are a science fiction reader and you are very fond of Arthur C. Clarke, please tell me what your next favourite would be after Rendezvous with Rama. I don't think I'm going to be able to believe that you prefer another one of his to this one, but tell me another Arthur C. Clarke to help redeem him further. Like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of thing. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.